everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist and keyboardist Sam Kiszka. You've probably noticed him on the stage with Greta Van Fleet, and we're here to find out all things that Sam has going on. Let's go back to the past. How did you get started in music and on bass?
All right. That, I don't remember. I'm just gonna, basically, oh God, I already did it. I just punned it, basically.
It's all good. Carry on. Arr, arr, arr.
Well, it started when I was 12, I believe. And I started on this little shiny red Fernandez P bass that my dad had laying around. And the reason that it was laying around is because my dad tried to play bass. And he did it for a few years. And what he says is he just fundamentally never understood the instrument. But that is one part of the story. Mm-hmm. That's where fate intersects with my mother saying, Sam, your brothers are out there playing. We have a bass and we have a bass amp. Do you want to just try it? I was like, well, yeah. And Jake showed me a few little simple notes, just something like a do 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 do,
yeah,
to play along with the band. And after a while, I kind of understood its function, and then all of music was so obvious to me, just the way that things interact with each other. And of course, still I learn something new every day about rhythm and, that interaction, because it's infinite.
Sure.
And that was my early beginnings. Actually, funny story is that Jake tuned the bass wrong. So I was playing with a different tuning for months and months. It was tuned, instead of E-A-D-G, it was tuned D-G-B-E, like top strings of the guitar.
Oh, wow.
Because what Jake wants to do when he's playing bass is doing those leads and doing the bends and stuff. So I think that's why he did it like that. But I started looking up tabs, and I would try to play the tabs, and I was like, that isn't right at all. And that's when I figured out that my tuning was wrong.
There you go. Well, and guitar players always like to noodle so much more, so I'm not surprised that he made it work for him. And are you pretty much self-taught, or have you had any additional training?
No, that was kind of all I got right there, was just a few notes, and that's when I started kind of going out and learning it with my brain and ears. And I think for a big part of it, my father actually was leading me toward the stuff that he knew was very true, and the great bass playing. Mm-hmm. He put me toward Jack Bruce, which was definitely my earliest inspiration for playing bass. We were in the car, and Sunshine of Your Love came on, and he was like, do you hear what it's doing? You hear that bass down there? I'm like, oh yeah. And that was the first time I really fixated on the bass in a mix. And so, yeah, that was definitely where I learned how to do a bass fill, Jack Bruce.
Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, Greta Van Fleet has been going since 2012. So now you guys have been at it for a while and getting ready to release another album, The Battle at Garden's Gate. This is your sophomore album. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, going into the album, what we wanted to do was make an album that is widescreen. We wanted to make something that was very cinematic, because not necessarily as musicians, but as producers, that's always been something that was really inspiring. Like watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, you're barely even watching it for the movie aspect of it. I mean, it's just gorgeousness. Mm-hmm. I mean, all the iconic John Williams stuff. So yeah, it's always been a very big inspiration for us to have that sound. Mm-hmm. And we thought, why can't we put this production on a rock and roll Greta Van Fleet album?
Yeah.
And so that was definitely the intent. And in my opinion, that's exactly how it turned out.
Gotcha. Well, and one of the challenging things that we run into, especially with young musicians, is that I think a lot of people will compare your sound to groups that have come before you. And in your guys' instance, most of these are groups that were so beyond your time that now they're just old geezers. So as I'm listening and I'm picking up on elements, I know you've been compared somewhat to Led Zeppelin. I pick up on some Rush sounding kind of stuff. Your lead singer's range is just crazy. It's up in a stratosphere that I'm kind of going, oh my gosh. But again, very Led Zeppelin, very Geddy Lee, and then your bass lines, they're quite remarkable in that you're putting in a lot of nice melodic bits that I think the general population may not grasp. It's kind of like what McCartney did with Beatles music, is that he put some melodic elements where before him, a lot of people just stayed, like you were saying originally, like dun 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 dun, just kind of pedaling on a 3-chord tune, where I was catching you're throwing some stuff in there that you kind of go, oh, well, that's nice. So quite complimentary. But 12 tracks, each one coming out swinging. It's pretty dynamic.
Right on. Well, thank you. Once again, the thought that we put into this music really goes beyond anything that we have ever done. Because over making an EP, a double EP, and our first album, I think I really came in tune with how I like to work. And for the most part, getting that rough track down, that's all you need. And then I like to sit in front of the board with a bass, trying out different stuff and trying to find where it belongs and where it can go to avoid, doubling the same notes as a vocal, or, if it's a different part, maybe not doubling the guitar, doing a counter melody, and finding the little something that really complements the song the most and what's so true about the song. Because it's always in there. You just have to, sometimes you got to really find it or look for it. So that's definitely the way that I liked to work for this record. And that's why there is a lot of the, sliding, melodically climbing up to like a fifth when you're on like the one of a new part and the bass is playing a different note. And just like, melodic playing, because I've always been a huge fan of McCartney's playing.
Yeah.
And I never really was able to do that kind of stuff in the band because of the very, riff heavy kind of thing. So a lot of the time I'm doing a double or something. So it's nice to be able to weave in and out of that.
Absolutely.
That was actually one of my early, I started getting irritated because I was just playing everything that Jake was playing. And I'm like, dude, why don't you just get like an octave? I don't even have to like do anything. So, because I was a really big fan of the Motown music as soon as I kind of got into bass playing. And I'm like, this doesn't play any riff or anything, just leads the song. You barely know it's there, but it creates that feel. It creates that kind of like you're walking down the street or you're like driving in a cool car or something. It just creates that kind of swagger. And that's always what I really wanted to do. So I guess my whole kind of career as a bass player was taking the intelligence of John Paul Jones and his parts and taking the raw energy of Jack Bruce and taking the feel of James Jamerson.
Very nice. Well, and it's always a challenge to do also when you've got such a dynamic frontman, because a lot of times when you have a vocalist that is coming out so strong like that, the rest of the band kind of pales in comparison. But you guys have got a really good balance with that. And so I picked up on a lot of the parts. Now, also even your keyboard playing, because the opening track sounds like a Hammond B3 initially.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was a song from a long time ago, and I think I really just wanted to create the sound of proverbial heaven, whatever that is, you know, like a white, like we were talking about earlier, the snow. What I'm imagining there is one of those days in Michigan where it snows for 2 feet, 3 feet, and we come out the next day and the sun's shining on all of it, and it's all untouched. And that's kind of like what I think the great beyond must look like, whatever you want to call it. And creating, like, once again, soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's a soundtrack to a movie that hasn't been created.
That is very much a paradise to people from Michigan. For folks in warmer weather places, you might go, oh man, I don't know that would be. I'll look at it from inside with a cup of hot cocoa. But moving also to your sound, how are you getting your sound as far as gear? What are you playing on?
Oh man, we did it all. We really did. There's some parts on the album where, actually, one big theme for the record is we used a lot of Leslie speaker. Just because being an organist, that's always something that has been something that I was in love with. The space that it creates, the way that there's a million ways to mic the thing. It's a moving speaker. Like, you know, you can get it to go woo, woo, woo. Yeah. You can get it real spacey. You can do whatever with it. So I think with this album was really about creating the soundscape and kind of creating a realm of around the music. And so we used a lot of effects like that to put it somewhere rather than here, or, you know, it's kind of like all over, it's all around you. So doing something like that, or also I used an octaver up, but most of the album is just a DI and an Ampeg B15.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, for anybody wondering, I mean, that's as simple as it gets, right?
Got you. Well, and you mentioned starting on a Fernandez, but what bass are you playing now?
I have my Fender P bass, and I believe the body is from the late 80s or so, and the neck is from my new-ish, made in Mexico Fender jazz bass. Because I got the P bass because the jazz bass, I figured the way I play, I just play too hard for a jazz bass most of the time, unless I'm in the studio and I can really focus on playing really quietly, and because that's where the tone is at for the jazz bass. But with the P bass, I found that I could really dig into it a lot more. So one of the producers of the first stuff, Marlon Young, he gifted me a P bass, and I did our first tour with it. And I never liked that it was wide at the nut. Because I use the thumb a lot. I reach around and I grab a low note with my thumb. And it was really difficult to do that with the P neck. So the first thing I did when I got home was I took the neck off my jazz bass and I replaced it, and that's how it's lived ever since.
Nice. Do you have a preference in strings?
No. I was going to make a joke, but I decided against it.
There you go. And another element that many times gets overlooked is instrument cables. Any choices there? Well,
yeah, I prefer a coiled cable just because I remember watching old Cream stuff, and you know, Jack Bruce and Clapton both had that, or like I'm pretty sure Santana at Woodstock has a long coiled cable, so it's just that look. I mean, yeah, Noel Redding, I've seen him with it. It's a very nice kind of aesthetic thing. So yeah, the coiled and a 90-degree on the bass jack.
Got you. And as we look ahead, I know we're in the pandemic, so a lot of people's plans are kind of on hold, but a lot of musicians are taking advantage of this time to do, you know, woodshedding, creative work, working on, you know, writing, doing whatever. What do you guys have in the works?
Oh yeah, everything. And that's the thing. The Battle at Garden's Gate is so heavy on, I hate the word content, but I think album packaging, because I think that all of the videos and photos and everything that goes into this universe right now is part of the album packaging, because we don't really have that anymore. It used to be you have a vinyl and the cover and the inside and the sleeves that tells you everything you need to know about the band, and it is the perception of the band. That record right there, that is how you are perceived by the masses.
Mm-hmm.
So in this day and age, with no physical barely, other than the people who like it, you don't get that. And with no live shows, what is there to do? So what we've been doing is really, really album packaging heavy. Creating the videos and creating them very, very well. We want everything to be exactly perfect, because that's how we, scrutinized the album and got it to that point. And the visuals, which you'll see pretty soon.
Nice.
I'm very excited about it, and we've been doing all kinds of that stuff. I got some big stuff in the works, actually.
Very cool. Very exciting stuff. Well, Sam, we appreciate you taking time from your morning coffee to chat with us from sunshiny Nashville. Folks, you've seen him here, Sam Kiszka from Greta Van Fleet on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks for having me.